He had just collapsed in the hospital hallway. His 14-month-old daughter was in the ER with bronchitis, and a social worker was threatening to take her away. He was a veteran, penniless, betrayed by his wife, and utterly homeless, with only his loyal dog, Ghost. He had nothing left to lose. As the social worker arranged an emergency motel room, a luxury car pulled up. A man in a tailored suit stepped out. He wasn't a government official. He was Mitchell Vaughn, a lawyer, and he said he had been searching for Marcus all over the city. He wasn't there to take his daughter. He was there to inform this exhausted, broken man that he had just inherited a multi-million-dollar fortune. We hope you will enjoy this story. Please support us by subscribing to the channel. The cold woke Marcus Donovan. It was not the sharp, invasive cold of the high desert mountains in Afghanistan, but a damp, penetrating chill that settled deep in his bones. He was parked at a truck stop just outside Colorado Springs, the engine of his old pickup silent. He had not run the heater for 2 days, needing to save every last drop of fuel. The cab smelled of stale coffee, baby powder, and the faint, dusty scent of dog fur. Marcus was a tall man, 38 years old, with a lean, strong frame that looked like it had been carved from hardwood. His brown hair was a little too long, sweeping over his ears, and was feathered with a distinguished silver at the temples that he had earned far too early. His face was weathered, etched with lines of hardship, but softened by a deep kindness in his eyes. He hadn't shaved in days, and a heavy, dark stubble covered his jaw. He pulled his old brown leather jacket tighter over the red and navy plaid flannel shirt beneath it. A low whine came from the passenger seat. "I know, boy. I'm cold too." Ghost, his 5-year-old German shepherd, lifted his head. The dog was a magnificent animal, not the standard black and tan, but a rare sable gray and white, his coat thick against the early autumn frost. He was a steady, serious dog, loyal to a fault, and acutely sensitive to Marcus's emotional state. He nudged his cold nose under Marcus's hand. In the extended cab, strapped into a car seat, a small figure stirred and whimpered in her sleep. Luna, 14 months old. His daughter. This was their life now. A veteran, his child, and his dog, living in a 1999 pickup truck. Luna's whimper turned into a fussy, waking cry. "Bah! Bah!" "Okay, Pumpkin, I hear you," Marcus murmured, his voice rough from sleep. He reached back to fumble in the diaper bag. He found the last container of instant toddler formula. It was almost empty. The last diaper was in the visor. His wallet contained exactly $3. But today, that was supposed to change. Yesterday, after 18 months of fighting the bureaucracy, of endless paperwork and humiliating examinations, the notification had finally arrived. His VA disability claim for post-traumatic stress disorder and tinnitus had been approved. More importantly, the massive retroactive payment covering the entire 18-month waiting period had been deposited into his joint account. It was enough to get them an apartment, enough for food, for gas, for diapers, enough to finally breathe. "All right, Ghost," Marcus said, the first trace of hope in his voice in a long time. "You hold the fort. I'll be right back." Ghost watched intently as Marcus slid out of the truck. The cold air hit his face. He walked across the cracked pavement toward the gas station's brightly lit convenience store, past the diesel pumps to the ATM vestibule. He slid the debit card into the slot. The machine whirred. He entered his PIN and selected Withdrawal. He punched in $200. The machine paused, then displayed the message in stark red letters. Insufficient funds. Marcus stared. He must have hit the wrong button. He tried again. $100. Insufficient funds. A knot of ice formed in his stomach. He canceled the transaction and selected Check Balance. The screen flickered. Checking account balance. $4.17. "No," he whispered. That was impossible. He had seen the email. The transfer was confirmed. The balance yesterday afternoon had been over $54,000. He stumbled back to the truck, his heart hammering against his ribs in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. Ghost sensed the change instantly, standing up on the passenger seat, his ears alert. No, no, no! Marcus grabbed his phone from the dash. The battery was at 11%. He frantically opened his banking app, his fingers numb and clumsy. He logged in. He stared at the transaction history. Deposit, U.S. Dept of Veterans Affairs. Plus $54,128.50, and right below it, timestamp 2 hours later. Withdrawal, wire transfer to Unified Trust. $54,324.33, a wire transfer, not an ATM withdrawal, not a check. A deliberate, authorized wire transfer that had emptied the entire account. He knew instantly who held the authorization. His hands shook so badly he almost dropped the phone. He went to his contacts and pressed the name. Valerie. It rang once. Then a synthesized voice. The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service. The phone slipped from his grasp and hit the rubber floor mat. He just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. Valerie was gone. The truck, this truck, was in his name. The joint bank account was the only thing she had needed. Luna began to cry in earnest now, a full-throated wail of a hungry toddler. Da, da, ba, ba. The sound was a trigger. It threw him backward in time to 2 weeks ago in their small, cramped rental apartment. Luna had just started walking and was a tornado of new energy. She was pulling books off a low shelf, shrieking with that high-pitched sound only a 14-month-old can make. Marcus had been on the living room floor, his back against the couch, trying to ride out a PTSD spike. A construction crew down the street had dropped a steel beam, and the resulting boom had sent him straight back to Kandahar. He was breathing, focusing on the texture of the carpet, trying to stay present. Valerie had walked in, her purse in her hand. "Marcus, can you please do something about her?" she had snapped. Her voice was brittle. "I can't even hear myself think. I have a headache." He remembered looking up at her, trying to explain. "It was just a loud noise, Val. I'm okay." "It's always a loud noise," she had said, rubbing her temples. "When is that VA money coming in, Marcus? You promised. You promised things would be better when the money came in." He thought she was just stressed. He thought she was just tired. He flashed to another memory, a month before that. Luna, fussy with teething, wouldn't sleep. Valerie stood over the crib, her back rigid. "She was so much easier when she was a newborn," she'd whispered, her voice tight with resentment. "She never cried this much. Now she's always moving, always needing something." Back in the truck, the fragments clicked into place. The complaints about Luna's toddler phase, the constant questions about the money. Her frustration was not about the noise or the stress, it was the impatience of someone waiting for a paycheck. She had been waiting. She had endured his nightmares, his triggers, and the burden of a high-needs child for one reason, that 18-month back payment. She hadn't run away from a difficult life. She had cashed out. This was not an escape. It was a heist, a cold, calculated plan. Luna's cries reached a frantic pitch. She was hungry, she was cold, and she was scared. Ghost whined, a deep, anxious sound in his chest. He pushed his way across the bench seat and forced his heavy head onto Marcus's lap, looking up at him with profound, unwavering loyalty. He licked the back of Marcus's hand, a rough, warm anchor in the freezing cab. The touch, the simple presence of the dog, cut through the shock. Marcus looked down at Ghost, then back at his daughter in the mirror, his family, the only ones who had not abandoned him. He picked up the phone, $4.17. He looked at the gas gauge, just under a quarter tank. The panic evaporated, replaced by something else, a cold, hard resolve that settled over him like a plate of armor. He had survived IEDs in the desert. He had survived the VA. He would survive this. He put the truck in gear. The engine turned over, a rough, protesting sound. "It's okay, Luna Bean," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "Daddy's here. It's okay. We're going to figure this out." He pulled out of the truck stop, driving toward a future that had, in the span of 5 minutes, become completely, terrifyingly blank. The VA regional office was a sterile block of gray concrete and tinted glass, a place Marcus had spent the last 18 months learning to dread. He pulled the truck into a spot marked Visitor, the engine sputtering as he killed the ignition. He couldn't take Ghost inside. "Okay, boy," he said, turning to the big shepherd. "Watcher, you watch Luna. I'll be fast." Ghost seemed to understand. He moved from the passenger seat to the floor, laying his head on the center console, his intelligent eyes fixed on the small, sleeping form in the car seat. Marcus cracked 2 windows, just enough for air but not enough for a hand, and locked the doors. Every step he took toward the building felt like walking away from his own lungs. He carried Luna in his arms, her 14-month-old body warm and heavy against his chest, her head tucked into the curve of his neck. She was awake now, but quiet, her thumb in her mouth. The waiting room was a sea of gray linoleum and fluorescent lights that gave everyone a sickly, pale cast. He took a number and sat. 2 hours later, his number was called. He approached the window, the thick glass separating him from the woman on the other side. She was Miss Rivas, a supporting character, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, her demeanor worn neutral by years of hearing desperate stories. "Mr. Donovan," she said, not looking up from her screen. "How can we help you?" Marcus shifted Luna, who was starting to fuss. "My name is Marcus Donovan. I'm a veteran. My VA retroactive payment was deposited yesterday. Last night, my wife, she took all of it. She left. My daughter and I are homeless. We have nothing. I need emergency assistance. A voucher. Anything." Ms. Rivas typed, her painted nails making small clicking sounds on the keyboard. "I see your record, Mr. Donovan, and I do see the disbursement." She paused, then finally looked at him, her gaze flat. "Sir, our records show a deposit of over $54,000 was successfully made to your joint account yesterday." "Yes," Marcus said, his voice raw. "But it's gone. She stole it. I have $4. Look." He pulled out his wallet. Miss Rivas sighed, a small, impatient sound. "Sir, that is a domestic dispute, a civil matter. You need to file a police report. As far as the VA is concerned, you are not indigent. You are a veteran who has just received a substantial payment. I cannot approve an emergency voucher or override the system. You are flagged as compensated. I'm very sorry. But we're in the truck. My daughter—" "You need to contact the police, sir. That's the only advice I have." She was already looking past him, motioning for the next person in line. Next. Numb, Marcus walked out into the sharp autumn air. The system had worked perfectly. It had identified him, processed him, and paid him. And in doing so, it had made him invisible to the very safety nets he now needed. He got back in the truck, the smell of Ghost, a mild comfort. Luna was crying, her ba-ba for a bottle, now a hungry wail. "I know, baby, I know," he whispered, his own panic rising. He drove aimlessly at first until he saw a sign. Beacon of Hope Shelter. He parked, his heart hammering. He got out, this time taking Ghost on his short leash and strapping Luna to his chest in her carrier. The 3 of them, a strange, broken little family unit, walked to the door. A young man in a fleece vest stepped out to meet them. He was Brian, a supporting character, a volunteer with a clipboard and a nervous smile. "Hey, man," Brian said, holding up a hand. "Welcome, but I can't let you in." "We just need a bed," Marcus said, "just for tonight." Brian pointed at Ghost, who was standing quietly at Marcus's left, a solid gray shadow. "Sorry, no pets. State health code. It's a hard rule." "He's not a pet," Marcus insisted, his voice cracking. He's family. I can't leave him." "I get it, I really do," Brian said, his eyes full of pity, which Marcus hated. "You can have a bed, but the dog has to go to the county kennel. We can call them for you." Marcus looked down at Ghost. The dog had been with him through the divorce, through the nightmares, through the long, lonely nights before Luna was born. He was the only thing that had never wavered. Leaving him at a kennel was the same as abandoning him. It wasn't possible. "We'll find somewhere else," Marcus said, turning away before Brian could say another word. He drove again, the gas needle dipping ominously toward the red E. He passed another facility, Haven Family Center. It looked warmer, more inviting. This time he left Ghost in the truck, promising the dog he would be right back. He carried Luna inside. The lobby smelled of bleach and boiled vegetables. A woman at the front desk looked up. She was Karen O'Leary, a supporting character, an older woman with kind eyes and a weary smile. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked. "I hope so," Marcus said, his throat tight. "I need a room. For my daughter and me. We're homeless. Her mother left." Karen's kind smile faltered. She looked at Luna, then back at Marcus, her expression shifting to one of professional caution. "I see. And where is her mother now?" "I don't know. She took all our money." "Oh, you poor thing," Karen said, but she was already shaking her head. "Sir, I'm very sorry. The Haven Family Center's charter is for women and children. Most of our residents are, well, they are fleeing domestic situations. We aren't equipped for single fathers." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, his last thread of hope fraying. "It's a safety and liability issue, sir. We can't have men staying in the same facility as the women and children who, well, you understand." "But I'm fleeing. We're the ones who need safety. She's a baby. It's getting cold." His voice was rising, and he knew it was the wrong thing to do, but he couldn't stop it. A large man in a security uniform, Mr. Giles, stepped away from a nearby wall. He was a supporting character, his presence a silent warning. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice," Karen said, her kindness gone, replaced by firm policy. "I can give you a pamphlet for the men's intake shelter downtown, but they won't be able to take your daughter." It was a perfect bureaucratic checkmate. He was a man, so he couldn't go to the family shelter. He was a father, so he couldn't go to the men's shelter. He was a dog owner, so he couldn't go to the petless shelter. He was a veteran, so the VA said he wasn't poor. He was a man, a father, and a dog owner, and he was, therefore, completely and utterly on his own. Mr. Giles put a hand on his arm. "Sir, you need to leave. You're upsetting the residents." Marcus looked at the guard's hand, then at his face. He said nothing. He turned, shifted Luna in his arms, and walked out. He got back in the truck. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant, insulting shades of orange and purple. The temperature was dropping fast. The truck's low fuel light pinged, a cheerful electronic sound that signaled their doom. He pulled into the dark corner of a strip mall parking lot next to a defunct appliance store. He killed the engine. This was it. This was where they would sleep. He had failed. He put his head against the steering wheel, the cold plastic biting into his forehead. He didn't have the energy to cry. Luna had finally dozed off in her seat. A sudden, sharp tapping on the driver's side glass made him jolt upright. Ghost exploded. A deep thoracic sound of warning rumbled from his chest, his teeth bared. Outside the window stood a man. He was older, maybe late 60s, his face a roadmap of hard living under a tangle of gray-white beard. He wore an old Marine Corps field jacket, the USMC emblem on the pocket, faded but unmistakable. He held his hands up, palms out, showing they were empty. "Easy there, brother," the man's voice rasped through the glass. "That's a serious dog you got. Just saw the kid, saw the look on your face. You're new to this?" Marcus, wary, his hand on the door lock, lowered the window 2 inches. "Who are you?" "Name's Deacon," the man said. He was a main supporting character, his demeanor tough, but not threatening. "And that look you're wearing, that's the I just ran out of options look. VA turn you away?" "How did you know?" Deacon pointed to the small faded EOD sticker on Marcus's rear window. "Saw the sticker, saw the baby seat. The system ain't built for us, son, especially not us with attachments. They don't know where to file us." He gestured with his chin. "You can't stay here. Cops will run you off before midnight, but St. Mary's, over on Platte Avenue. The main parking lot, back corner. Cops let us be, long as we're quiet. It's safer than here." I don't have any food," Marcus admitted, the words tasting like ash. "Or gas." "I know," Deacon said. "Tomorrow, CO 800, the Springs Mission. They serve breakfast, hot, and—" He fumbled in his own worn-out jacket, pulling out a crumpled flyer. "This is what you really need. The food bank on Tejon, they'll give you formula and diapers. Tell them Deacon sent you, they'll treat you right." Deacon's eyes drifted past Marcus to the car seat. His hard expression softened for a fraction of a second. "You keep that little one warm, Marine." "EOD, Army," Marcus corrected him, his voice barely a whisper. "Same mud, different boots," Deacon said with a grim smile. He took a step back, melting into the shadows as if he were never there. Marcus was left alone, the cab filled with the low rumble from Ghost's chest. He looked at the crumpled flyer in his hand. It was the first real, useful thing he had received all day. The back corner of the St. Mary's parking lot was a small, silent community of shadows. Deacon had been right. It was a cold sanctuary, populated by 3 other dark vehicles, a windowless van, an ancient RV, and a sedan sitting low on flat tires. No one spoke. No one emerged. A respectful, invisible boundary of shared desperation hung between them. Marcus had parked with his truck's grill facing the exit, a habit from his deployment that he could not break. It was 3 a.m. He had not slept. Life in the cab of a pickup truck with a 14-month-old was a special kind of hell. Luna was not a quiet, sleepy infant. She was a toddler. She wanted to move, to crawl, to explore. The cab, which was their fortress, had become her cage. She had spent the last several hours in a state of fussy, frustrated crying, pulling at her car seat straps and batting at the cold windows. Her cries, sharp and repetitive in the confined space, were like tiny needles boring into Marcus's skull. His PTSD made him hyper-vigilant to sound, and the high, piercing wail of his own daughter felt like an incoming mortar, setting every nerve on edge. "I know, baby girl, I know," he murmured, his voice hoarse. We have to be quiet." He had tried to give her the crackers he'd gotten from the food bank, but she pushed them away. She was cold, bored, and hungry for something warm. Okay, I hear you," Marcus said, making a decision. He dug into his pack and pulled out the small, collapsible butane stove. It was a remnant from his old camping gear. He also retrieved a jar of mushed carrots and peas from the food bank box. He cracked his window and the passenger window, needing ventilation. The wind, which had picked up, immediately sliced into the cab, carrying the smell of impending snow. "Just a minute, boy," he said to Ghost. The big shepherd was shivering, but his gaze was fixed on Marcus, trusting. Marcus set the stove on the floor mat, a tiny, precarious island of metal. He struck the igniter. A weak blue flame sputtered to life with a low hiss. He balanced a small metal cup on the ring, emptied the jar of carrots into it, and added a splash of water from his canteen. The smell of warm carrots filled the cab, and Luna's crying quieted, replaced by an interested, "Ooh?" "Yeah, that's right, Pumpkin. Food," Marcus said, managing a weak smile. He stirred the food with a plastic spoon. It was working. It was a small good thing in a sea of bad. And then the flame died. The hiss disappeared, replaced by the hollow sound of the wind. Marcus flicked the igniter. A spark, but no flame. He flicked it again. He picked up the butane canister and shook it. It was light, empty, the last of his fuel. He looked at the cup. The carrots were barely lukewarm. "No," he whispered. "Come on." He put the lid on the cup and shook it hard, trying to distribute the meager warmth before handing it back to Luna. She ate it, but listlessly, her earlier enthusiasm gone. After she finished, Marcus settled back, pulling a worn wool blanket over himself and Ghost. He arranged another, smaller blanket over Luna in her seat. He had to keep her strapped in. It was the only way to keep her from tumbling off the seat if he fell asleep. The temperature inside the cab was now dropping fast. He could see his breath. Luna began to fuss again, but the sound was different. It wasn't the angry, frustrated shriek of a bored toddler. It was a high-pitched, miserable whimper. She was still for the first time all night, her head lolling against the side of the car seat. Marcus reached back. His fingers brushed her cheek. She was hot. Too hot, he mumbled, his exhausted mind struggling to process. He pulled the blanket off her, thinking he had overheated her. "Duh," she whimpered, a weak, glassy-eyed protest. "It's okay, baby. Just rest." Ghost, who had been curled into a tight ball on the seat, lifted his head. He let out a low, almost inaudible whine from deep in his chest. He pushed his nose against Marcus's arm, then looked toward the back of the cab. "What is it, boy?" Marcus whispered. "I know, it's cold." Ghost was not satisfied. He whined again, louder this time, sniffing the air around Luna's car seat. He was agitated, but Marcus was too tired to see it. The last few days were catching up to him. The shock of Valerie's betrayal, the bureaucratic stonewalling at the VA, the rejections from the shelters, the constant gnawing fear. It was a weight he could no longer hold up. His eyelids felt like lead. He was just resting his eyes. Just for a minute. He slumped forward, his forehead coming to rest on the cold, hard plastic of the steering wheel. He fell asleep. The world of the truck cab went silent, save for the whistling wind and the shudder of Marcus's breathing. An hour passed, then 2. The whimper from the back seat had stopped. It was this silence that finally registered with Ghost. To the dog, the pack was his world. The alpha, Marcus, was still, his scent heavy with stress and exhaustion. The cub, Luna, had been making sounds of distress. Now she made no sound at all. Ghost's acute senses, which could detect the subtle chemical changes in Marcus's body before a PTSD attack, were now screaming at him. The air in the cab was wrong. He stood up, his claws ticking on the vinyl seat, and pushed his head into the back. He nudged Luna's leg with his nose. It was limp. He sniffed her face. The scent coming off her was sharp, sickly, and radiated an intense, unnatural heat. He knew this scent. It was the scent of wrongness. It was the scent of danger. He nudged her again, harder. She did not respond. Ghost turned back to Marcus. The alpha was asleep. The pack was in danger, and the alpha did not know. It was Ghost's job to make him know. He started with a low whine, pushing his head hard under Marcus's arm. Marcus groaned in his sleep. "Go away, boy. Let me be." Ghost pulled back. This was not working. He tried again, putting his paws on Marcus's shoulder and pushing, this time letting out a sharp yip. Marcus just slumped further. Ghost's anxiety spiked. The cub was too quiet. The alpha was non-responsive. He fell back on his most basic powerful instinct. A frantic, percussive bark erupted in the confined space, a sound so loud it vibrated against the glass. Marcus jolted awake, his heart exploding in his chest. "Ghost, down! What is it?" He was disoriented, adrenaline surging, his mind still in the deserts of Afghanistan. He grabbed the dog's ruff. "I said, down!" But Ghost ignored the command. He twisted out of Marcus's grip, scrambling over the center console, and barked again, not at Marcus, but at Luna. The fog of sleep and disorientation vanished, replaced by a cold dread. "Luna?" Marcus turned, fumbling in the darkness. He clicked the weak yellow dome light. Luna was pale, frighteningly still. Her lips looked dry, and her cheeks were flushed a deep, unnatural red. "Luna? Baby?" He reached back and laid his hand on her forehead. The skin was on fire. It was not warm. It was a dry, searing heat that felt like touching a hot plate. She was burning up from the inside out. Oh, no, 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 no. He unstrapped her, pulling her limp body from the seat. She was barely responsive, her head falling back. She let out a tiny, pained moan. He looked at the fuel gauge. The orange light was on. Empty. He looked at Ghost. The dog was whining, staring at him, having done the only thing he knew how to do. Marcus hit the steering wheel with the heel of his hand. He didn't have time for anger. He had to move. The truck roared to life, a coughing, sputtering protest against the cold ignition. Marcus did not have time to let it warm up. He threw the gear shifter into drive, the transmission catching with a heavy clunk. Luna was a terrifying, limp weight in his arms. He had her cradled against his chest with his right arm, his left hand gripping the steering wheel. It was reckless. It was unsafe, but the car seat was too far away, too cold. He needed her close. He needed to feel her breathing. "Hang on, baby, hang on," he chanted, the words a desperate prayer. Ghost was frantic. The big shepherd, sensing the panic, was trying to climb into Marcus's lap, whining, his eyes wide. "No, back," Marcus commanded, his voice a sharp bark of his own. "Ghost, back!" The dog, stunned by the tone, obeyed, retreating to the passenger seat, but he remained standing, his body vibrating with anxiety. Marcus drove. He ran the stop sign at the edge of the parking lot, his tires squealing on the cold asphalt. He saw the H symbol on a blue sign. Hospital, 2 miles. The low fuel light was a mocking amber eye on the dashboard. The truck was running on fumes. "Don't you do it, don't you dare," he growled at the dashboard. He drove by instinct, his EOD training taking over. This was not a drive. It was an extraction. Clear the area. Evacuate the package. His focus narrowed to the road, his hand steady despite the terror that was thrumming just beneath his skin. He saw the red emergency sign and swerved the truck, ignoring the ambulance-only signs, pulling up directly onto the curb in front of the sliding glass doors. He killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. He looked at Ghost. "I have to leave you, boy. I have to. You watch the truck. Watch the truck." Ghost let out a pained, high-pitched sound, a protest of pure loyalty. Marcus didn't have time for guilt. He pushed the door open, his body aching from the cold. He ran into the fluorescent glare of the emergency room, clutching his daughter. "Help!" he yelled, the word tearing from his raw throat. "My baby! She's burning up! Please, help!" Instantly, he was surrounded. A Nurse Patel, a supporting character with sharp, efficient eyes and quick hands, was the first to reach him. "Right here, sir. Triage room now. What's going on?" "Fever. She's 14 months. We were in the truck. It's cold. I think she just stopped crying." They took Luna from him. The separation was physical, a tearing sensation. One moment, she was his, a warm, sick weight. The next, she was gone, disappearing behind a blue curtain, as 2 other nurses joined the first. He was left standing alone in the middle of the waiting room, his arms empty, his body covered in the grime of the truck cab. A security guard was already walking toward him, gesturing to the entrance. "Sir, you can't park there. You need to move your truck." It's out of gas," Marcus lied, his mind blank. "My dog is in it." The guard's expression hardened. "You have to move it, now, or it will be towed." I can't." Before the guard could argue, Nurse Patel emerged from the curtain. "He's with the pediatric fever. He stays." She vanished again. The guard huffed, but backed off. Marcus sank into a hard plastic chair. The next hour was a blur of antiseptic smells, the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum, and the distant, muffled sounds of other people's pain. He stared at the blue curtain. His hands were shaking, a fine, uncontrollable tremor. He locked them together, pressing them between his knees. Finally, a man in blue scrubs pushed the curtain aside. He was Dr. Reyes, a supporting character, his face tired but kind. "Mr. Donovan?" Marcus was on his feet instantly. Is she okay?" "She's stable," the doctor said, and Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. "Her fever was dangerously high, 104.5. She's severely dehydrated. We're getting fluids into her now, and we have her on a cooling blanket. The labs show she has a bad case of bronchitis, verging on pneumonia." "Bronchitis? But she was fine yesterday." "It happens that fast with toddlers, especially if their immune systems are stressed, like from exposure to cold." The doctor's kind eyes turned questioning. "She's going to be okay, but we're admitting her. We need to keep her on IV fluids and oxygen for at least 24 hours. Admit her? Yes, okay. Whatever you need, Marcus stammered. Dr. Reyes hesitated. He looked at Marcus's worn leather jacket, his matted hair, the dark circles under his eyes. Mr. Donovan, where is Luna's mother? She's not with us. She left. I see. And where are you and Luna staying? Nurse Patel noted you said you were in the truck. Marcus's blood ran cold. This was not a question about medicine. This was an accusation. We're between places right now. We're fine. I can take care of her. The doctor held up a hand. I know you can, but Luna's condition is a direct result of her environment. I've asked our hospital social worker to come and speak with you, just to see what resources we can arrange. She'll be here in a moment. The doctor gave him a reassuring, if brief, pat on the shoulder and disappeared. A new kind of terror, colder and more suffocating than the fear of the fever, settled on Marcus. 10 minutes later, a woman approached him. She was in her mid-40s, wearing a gray pantsuit and sensible shoes. She was Danielle Hoover, a main supporting character. Her hair was pulled back in a neat professional bun, and her expression was one of profound, managed empathy. She carried a clipboard like a shield. Mr. Donovan, I'm Danielle Hoover, the hospital's social services coordinator. Her voice was soft but firm. There was no room for negotiation in her tone. Dr. Reyes asked me to chat with you about Luna's home situation. She led him to a small private consultation room. It was tiny, windowless, and smelled like stale coffee. Please sit, she said. Marcus sat. He felt like he was in an interrogation room. Mr. Donovan, I'm going to be very direct because we don't have a lot of time, she said, opening her folder. Luna is going to be fine, but this is the second time this month we've seen a pediatric case of bronchitis linked to unstable housing. She looked him directly in the eye. Are you and your daughter homeless? The word was a slap. Yes? Are you staying in your truck? Marcus just nodded, his throat too thick to speak. Danielle Hoover sighed. It was not a sigh of pity, but of exasperation with the world. She clicked her pen. Okay, here is the situation, she said, the professional firm side taking over completely. I understand this is difficult. I understand you are her father, and you love her. But I cannot, by law, discharge a minor into an unsafe environment. A vehicle in early winter, with no heat, is legally defined as an unsafe and neglectful environment. Neglectful? The word hit him. I would never neglect my daughter. I know you wouldn't intend to, Danielle said, her voice softening just a fraction. But the result is the same. She is here with pneumonia because she was cold. My only job here, Mr. Donovan, is to protect Luna. So what happens? He whispered. So we have until she is medically cleared for discharge. That gives us about 24 hours. You need to find a stable, verifiable, and warm address, a shelter, a family member's home, an apartment. I told you I have nothing, Marcus said, the desperation rising. My wife took everything. The shelters won't take us. One won't take my dog, the other won't take me. Danielle's face hardened. A dog? I can't leave him. He's family. He's in the truck right now. Danielle closed her folder. The sound was as final as a gavel. Mr. Donovan, I am going to be very clear because I think you are in shock. You do not have a choice here. The dog is not relevant. The only thing that is relevant is Luna's safety. If you cannot provide me with a verifiable, safe address by the time she is ready for discharge, I will have no choice. I will have to place Luna into temporary state protective custody. You can't. I must, she said, her voice firm. It is not a choice. It is my legal binding obligation. You have 24 hours. She stood up. I'll be back to check on you in the morning. You can go see Luna in the pediatric wing in about an hour. They're just getting her settled. She left the room. Marcus sat there. The tiny windowless room was spinning. Temporary protective custody. They were going to take his daughter. He had survived IEDs. He had survived firefights. He had survived the loss of his friends, the betrayal of his wife, the failure of the VA, the humiliation of the shelters. But this was not a fight. This was an execution. He stumbled out of the consultation room into the bright, sterile hallway. He needed air. He needed to think. He thought of Luna, alone in a plastic hospital crib. He thought of Ghost, alone in the freezing truck, watching the hospital doors, waiting for him to come back. He had failed them both. He reached out a hand to steady himself against the pale green wall. The linoleum floor seemed to tilt beneath his feet. He was not being shot at. He was not in danger. He was being defeated by a clipboard, by policy, by a system that had no room for him. The strength that had carried him through the last 48 hours, the adrenaline that had fueled his drive to the hospital, it all evaporated at once. His knees buckled. He didn't faint. He collapsed. He slid down the wall, his leather jacket making a soft, sighing sound against the paint. He landed in a heap on the floor, his head in his hands. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a father. He was just nothing. A sound tore out of his chest, a dry, ragged gasp, the sound of a man who had just lost the only thing he had left. The cold linoleum of the hospital floor was the first thing he felt. It was a hard, unforgiving reality pressing against his cheek. Then came the sounds, amplified and distant at the same time, the squeak of a cart's wheels, a muffled page over the intercom, and a voice close to his ear. "Mr. Donovan? Sir?" A hand, firm but not unkind, was on his shoulder. Marcus pushed himself up, his body feeling disconnected from his mind. He was on his hands and knees in the middle of a hospital corridor. He was a combat veteran, an EOD specialist who had faced down death, and he was on the floor like a drunk. Danielle Hoover was kneeling a few feet away. The rigid mask of professionalism had slipped. In its place was a look of profound, weary understanding. She had not seen a criminal. She had not seen a neglectful father. She had seen a man break. "Come on," she said, her voice softer now, but still commanding. She stood and helped him to his feet. He was unsteady, his limbs heavy. "Let's go back to the office." He followed her, numb. He felt like a prisoner being led back to his cell. She closed the door to the tiny consultation room and motioned for him to take the chair. He sat. The room was just as small, just as airless as it had been 10 minutes ago. Danielle sat opposite him, not behind a desk. She took a deep breath, and when she spoke, she was no longer just a gatekeeper. She was, for a moment, just a person. "I've seen men like you before, Mr. Donovan," she said quietly. "My father was 101st Airborne, Vietnam, 1969. He came home, but he never really left the jungle. He just found a new one." Marcus looked up. This was not the speech he was expecting. "He was a good man," she continued, her gaze fixed on the folder in her lap. "A proud man, and he would have rather died than ask for help. He saw it as weakness, so he self-medicated, he pushed us away. And the system, the VA, they failed him. They failed us." She finally met his eyes. "You are not your father, and I am not the system that failed him. What I saw in that hallway was not neglect. It was desperation, and desperation I can work with." Marcus just stared, his throat too tight to speak. Danielle's demeanor shifted, the professional returning, but this time she was an advocate, not an adversary. "I am still bound by protocol, Mr. Donovan. I cannot and will not discharge Luna to a truck, but your collapse, it qualifies you as in acute distress, and that opens a new door." She picked up the phone on the desk and dialed an extension. "This is Hoover in Social Services," she said, her voice all business. "I have a pediatric intake. Father is a veteran, single parent, displaced. Yes, I'm classifying him as an acute 12B. I need an emergency voucher. 2 nights. And, yes, he has a K9. Marcus's head snapped up. Danielle covered the mouthpiece. "Is it a service animal?" No, he's just... Ghost? She nodded, uncovered the phone. "It's a companion animal. Non-aggressive, German Shepherd. Yes, I know that's harder. Check the Crossroads. They do? Good. Authorize it. Bill it to the Veterans Crisis Fund. Thank you. She hung up and wrote something on a pad. Mr. Donovan, I can arrange an emergency 2-night motel voucher. It's standard procedure for displaced veterans with dependents in acute crisis, she said, carefully emphasizing the official terms. It's not much, but it's a roof, it's warm, and it's a verifiable address. She tore off the sheet and pushed it across the desk. The Crossroads Inn. It's on the other side of town. They are expecting you, and they will accept your dog. You have 48 hours. A motel, a warm room, a place for Ghost. It was a lifeline so unexpected he could barely process it. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me yet, Danielle said, holding up a hand. That's not all. She paused as if deciding how to phrase the next part. This is unusual. While you were in triage with Luna, the hospital switchboard received a call. And another one. And another one. Someone has been calling every hospital in the city, looking for you. By name. Marcus's blood ran cold. Valerie? No. A man. He identified himself as an attorney. He said he had been trying to locate you for weeks. He said it was an emergency. A lawyer? Marcus was confused. I don't owe anyone money except everyone. He said his name was Mitchell Vaughn, Danielle said, reading from her notes. From the law offices of Vaughn, Steiner, and Associates in Denver. He said he represents an estate, and that you are the sole beneficiary. Marcus just stared. It was a joke, a cruel, elaborate joke. That's impossible. He has the wrong guy. I don't know any lawyers. I don't know any estates. He was very specific, Danielle said, her gaze steady. Marcus Donovan, honorable discharge, 2024. Last known address, the apartment you just left. She leaned forward, her professional mask back in place, but this time it was different. It was the look of a strategist. Mr. Donovan, I'm going to be very frank with you, she said. I have just secured you 48 hours. That is a temporary fix. My report, as of this minute, still says unstable housing. Luna is still my case. When those 48 hours are up, we are right back here. Unless... She tapped the note with her pen. This lawyer, this Mr. Vaughn, you say you have no money, no resources. He is looking for you, using the word estate. To me, that sounds like a resource. An answer to the question of where will Luna sleep? She stood up. Frankly, Mr. Donovan, whether this conversation with Mr. Vaughn solves your homeless status will determine my final report. Do you understand me? He did. She was not just giving him a voucher. She was giving him an order. Go. Fix this. What does he want? Marcus asked, his head swimming. He wants to meet you. I told Mr. Vaughn's office that you were preoccupied, but that I would be placing you at the Crossroads Inn for your safety and privacy. She handed him the voucher slip. I took the liberty of scheduling him. He said he would meet you there in 1 hour. An hour? But Luna and my truck. Luna is safe. She's in the pediatric wing on the 3rd floor. She is sleeping. You can see her for 5 minutes on your way out, but you cannot stay, and you cannot bring your dog in here. Danielle walked to the door and held it open. You have a warm room waiting. You have a lawyer waiting, and you have a daughter who is waiting for you to have a safe place to bring her home to. Go take care of your dog, Mr. Donovan, and go to your meeting. Marcus stood, the voucher slip a flimsy piece of paper in his trembling hand. It felt like a summons. And Mr. Donovan, she said as he stepped into the hallway. He turned. My father. He never took the help, she said, her voice low. Don't be him. He nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin. He walked past the nurse's station, his boots silent on the clean floor. He went to the pediatric wing. He stood for 5 minutes, looking through the glass at Luna. She was asleep in a small, clean crib, an oxygen tube near her nose, a tiny IV in her hand. She was safe. She looked peaceful. He tore his eyes away. He walked out of the hospital, the automatic doors sliding open with a soft hiss, releasing him from the sterile warmth into the biting cold. The truck was where he'd left it, a dark, silent shape under the lights of the ambulance bay. He fumbled for his keys. As he got closer, a low, anxious whine came from inside. Then a single, heavy thump of a tail hitting the seat. Marcus opened the door. Ghost was a frantic wave of gray fur, leaping into his arms, licking his face, whining and trembling. "I know, boy. I'm here." I'm here," Marcus whispered, burying his face in the dog's thick ruff. He held on to the dog, the one solid, true thing in his life. "I left you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He sat in the driver's seat, the engine off, and just breathed in the familiar, dusty smell of his dog. He had $4.17. He had a motel voucher, he had a daughter in a hospital bed, and he had an appointment with a lawyer who was either a mistake, a scam, or a miracle. He put the key in the ignition. The low-fuel light glared at him. "Crossroads Inn," he said to Ghost. "Let's hope this voucher is real." He turned the key, and the engine, against all odds, turned over. The truck's engine did not die. It sputtered, coughed, and ran on what Marcus could only assume was pure hope, but it carried them the 4 miles across town. The Crossroads Inn was a low, 2-story building with peeling paint, a relic from a time when highways had personalities. A flickering neon sign buzzed in the darkness, its red light promising vacancy. He parked the truck in a dark spot at the far end of the lot. The fuel gauge needle was no longer just on E, it was physically resting on the pin beneath the line. "Okay," Marcus whispered, his voice a raw sound. "Last hurdle, boy." He left Ghost in the truck, a decision that felt like a betrayal, but he had no choice. He walked into the lobby, a small, bright room that smelled of industrial cleaner and stale cigarette smoke. The night clerk, a young man with headphones, didn't look up until Marcus stood directly in front of him. Marcus slid the voucher from Danielle Hoover across the counter. I'm here for a room, for 2 nights." The clerk, a supporting character named Leo, barely glanced at him. He took the paper, his eyes scanned it, and he began to type. A series of small, efficient clicks echoed in the lobby. He slid a plastic keycard and a registration form back. "Room 114, down the end. No smoking, no parties. You've got a pet?" The question was a bullet. "Yes, a German Shepherd. He's quiet, he's trained." Leo tapped his screen. "Voucher says K9 approved, $25 deposit." Marcus's stomach sank. I only have $3. Leo sighed, annoyed. He typed something else. "The crisis fund voucher covers the pet fee. Just keep him quiet." Relief, so profound it was sickening, washed over Marcus. He signed the paper. Room 114 was on the ground floor. It was cold. He unlocked the door, went back to the truck, and gave Ghost the quiet "load up" command. The dog shot out of the cab, his head low, and slipped into the room, his paws silent on the concrete walkway. Marcus grabbed his pack and the diaper bag. He locked the truck, a useless gesture, and closed the motel room door. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home was one of the best sounds he had ever heard. He found the thermostat on the wall. It was an old beige unit. He pushed the lever up to heat. A moment later, a loud clank echoed from the unit, followed by a rush of air and a low, steady hum. The smell of burning dust filled the room as the heating element kicked on. It was beautiful. Ghost was already checking the perimeter. He sniffed the threadbare carpet, the base of the lamp, the gap under the door to the adjoining room. He made one full circuit, then returned to Marcus, satisfied. He sat, his gray and white body a perfect model of discipline, and waited for the next command. "This is it, boy," Marcus said. "This is for now." He sat on the edge of the stiff polyester bedspread. He was safe, he was warm, his daughter was in a hospital, and a lawyer was coming. It was all too much. He didn't know what to do first. A sharp, solid knock sounded on the door. Marcus was on his feet before the sound had faded, his hand on the empty space on his hip where his weapon used to be. Ghost did not bark. A low, dangerous rumble vibrated deep in his chest. Marcus moved to the door, his heart hammering. He looked through the peephole. Standing in the harsh yellow light of the walkway was a man who did not belong here. He was in his late 50s, tall, with silver hair, and he wore an expensive dark wool overcoat over a perfectly tailored suit. He carried a sleek, brown leather briefcase. He was Mitchell Vaughn, a main supporting character, his face etched with intelligence and a calm, professional patience. He looked, Marcus thought, like a man who had never once worried about the price of gasoline. Marcus opened the door, but kept the security chain engaged. The man did not step back. He looked at Marcus, his gaze taking in the exhausted, unshaven face, the worn leather jacket, the fear. "Mr. Marcus Donovan?" The man's voice was steady, deep, and kind. "Who's asking?" "My name is Mitchell Vaughn. We spoke briefly through Ms. Hoover at the hospital. May I come in? I am not here to cause you harm. I am here, I hope, to help." Ghost was still rumbling, a sound like distant thunder. "Ghost! Quiet," Marcus commanded. The sound stopped, but the dog's muscles remained tense. Marcus pulled the chain. The door swung open. Mitchell Vaughn stepped inside. He did not flinch at the small, sparse room. He simply looked at Ghost, who was now standing, alert, between Marcus and the stranger. "He's a beautiful animal," Vaughn said, his voice calm. "He's protective," Marcus said, his hand on the dog's ruff. "As he should be," Vaughn said. He placed his briefcase on the small laminate desk. "Mr. Donovan, I am going to get right to the point. You are an exceptionally difficult man to find." "I'm not—" "I don't know what this is about," Marcus said, his defensiveness a shield. "If I owe someone money, I don't have it. Look at me. Look at this place. I have nothing." "This is not about money you owe, Mr. Donovan. This is about money you are owed." Vaughn opened his briefcase. He did not pull out files. He pulled out a single, thick, cream-colored envelope. "I am the executor for an estate," Vaughn said, holding the envelope. "The estate of a man named Arthur Pendleton. Are you familiar with that name?" Marcus searched his exhausted memory. "No, never heard of him." "Mr. Pendleton was a veteran of the Korean War. He passed away 2 weeks ago at his home, a ranch outside of Colorado Springs." Vaughn paused. "And in his last will and testament, he named you, Marcus Donovan, as his sole beneficiary." Marcus laughed. It was not a happy sound. It was a dry, harsh bark of pure disbelief. "You've got the wrong guy," Marcus said, shaking his head. "It's a mistake. I'm just a guy in a motel room. I don't know any old men on ranches." "I assure you it is not a mistake," Vaughn said. His eyes were kind, but insistent. "He knew you, and he left this for you." He held out the envelope. Marcus stared at it. He looked at Vaughn, searching for the trick, the angle. He saw none. He took the envelope. His name was written on the front in strong, shaky, old-fashioned cursive. He tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of matching paper, folded twice. He began to read. "My dear Mr. Donovan, if you are reading this, then I am gone. Good riddance, I suppose. You will not remember me. My name is Arthur Pendleton. We met once, 5 years ago. It was 2020. You were younger then, healthier. I was just old. There was an early season blizzard up on the pass. My old truck, a 1973 Ford, died on me. Fuel pump. I was stuck, no cell service. I was an old man, alone in a dying truck, and I was afraid. Then you pulled up behind me in your truck. You had a dog with you, too, a gray shepherd. Maybe the same one who is, I hope, reading this with you. You spent 2 hours in that wind, Mr. Donovan. 2 hours, lying on your back in the snow and slush with a headlamp on. You fixed my fuel pump with parts you had in your own toolbox. Your hands were so cold, I don't know how you held the tools. When you were done, I tried to pay you. I offered you all the cash I had, $200. You just shook your head. You looked at the Marine Corps sticker on my bumper, and you said, 'Veterans don't charge veterans. Get home safe.' And you drove away. I never forgot that. I've been trying to find you for the last year. I heard through the veteran network that you'd been discharged. I heard you were fighting the VA. I heard the system was failing you, just like it failed me back in 1954 when I came home. I wanted to help. I wanted to find you, to talk to you. But this illness, it moves fast. I am too old to build my dream. I bought an old ranch. I wanted to make it a place for guys like us, a place to work, to heal. But I ran out of time. So I leave it to you. I leave it all to you, Marcus. You're a soldier who knows how to build. You didn't just fix my truck that day. You gave an old man hope. Use it. Build something. Don't let the system win. Your friend, Arthur Pendleton. Marcus read the letter twice. His hands were shaking so hard, the paper made a rattling sound. He remembered. The blizzard, the old green Ford, the stubborn, proud old man. I remember him, he whispered, looking at Vaughn. The fuel pump? I'd forgotten all about it. He did not, Vaughn said softly. The estate is significant, Mr. Donovan. The ranch, property, substantial assets. It's all yours. Marcus's world tilted. He wasn't just tired anymore. He was unraveling. He looked at his dirty, grimy hands, holding this letter. He thought of Luna in her plastic crib with a tube in her nose. My daughter, he choked out, the words thick. She's in the hospital. She has pneumonia. Because I couldn't keep her warm. And this man. I am aware, Mr. Donovan, Vaughn said, his voice all business now, but not unkind. Ms. Hoover at the hospital was very clear about your situation. That is why I am here, at this motel, at this hour. He stepped forward. My first job as executor is to ensure the welfare of the beneficiary, your welfare, and by extension, your daughter's welfare. We can, and we will, solve this. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a wallet. He took out a single, black credit card. This is an estate-linked card. It is now yours. It has no limit that you need to worry about. It will not be declined. He placed it on the desk. My instructions are as follows, Vaughn said, his tone that of a commanding officer who knew the terrain. Go to the front desk. Book this room for a week. Go to the all-night diner across the street and get yourself and your dog a real meal. Get some sleep. He handed Marcus a business card. My number. I will call you at 800 hours tomorrow. I will pick you up. We will go to the hospital, and I will handle the discharge paperwork with Ms. Hoover. Then we will go see about your daughter. Am I clear? Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded, taking the card. Good, Vaughn said. He packed his briefcase. Get some rest, Mr. Donovan. The fight is over. He let himself out. The door clicked shut, the deadbolt sounding loud in the silence. Marcus was alone again, just him and Ghost. The heater hummed. He looked at the letter in one hand. He looked at the black credit card in the other. He sat on the bed. Ghost, sensing the shift, the uncoiling of years of tension, moved forward and put his heavy head on Marcus's knee. Marcus dropped the paper and the card. He buried his hands in the thick gray fur of his dog's neck. And for the first time since Valerie left, he let go. He wept, dry, silent, ragged sobs that shook his entire body. The next morning, the heat in the motel room was a thick, dry blanket, but to Marcus, it was a luxury. He had slept for 3 solid hours on the stiff mattress, the first real sleep he'd had in weeks. He had used the estate card to buy a hot breakfast from the diner, a new safe car seat, and 2 large bags of premium dog food, which Ghost had devoured with quiet dignity. At 800 hours, a sharp, polite knock sounded on the door. It was Mitchell Vaughn, looking as crisp and unwrinkled as he had the night before. This time, he was not in the overcoat, but in a perfect gray suit. He drove a dark, silent Lexus sedan. Mr. Donovan, he greeted Marcus, his eyes flicking to the empty breakfast containers. Good, you've eaten. The trip to the hospital was a blur. Vaughn handled everything. He walked into the administration office, a man on a mission, and emerged 20 minutes later with a stack of discharge papers. Marcus saw Danielle Hoover down the hall. She saw him, and she gave him a single, professional nod. The case was closed. They went to the pediatric wing. Luna, clean, fed, and breathing clear, was waiting in a hospital-issued onesie. Seeing her father, she held out her arms with a happy shriek. "Da-da!" Marcus lifted her, burying his face in her clean hair, overwhelmed by the simple, profound relief of her warmth and weight. "All right, Luna Bean," he whispered. "Let's go home." He put her in the new car seat, which he had installed in the back of Vaughn's pristine Lexus. Ghost, who had been commanded to stay in the motel room, was retrieved. The dog seemed to understand the shift in fortune, hopping into the back of the luxury sedan and sitting on the floor at Luna's feet as if he belonged there. "What about my truck?" Marcus asked as they pulled away, the old pickup looking small and broken in the motel parking lot. "I've arranged for a flatbed to retrieve it," Vaughn said. "It will be at the ranch when we arrive." The ranch was 20 minutes outside the city, where the sprawl of suburbia gave way to rolling hills and wide-open sky. Vaughn turned off the main road onto a smaller paved road and then onto a long gravel driveway marked by a simple wooden sign, Pendleton. The driveway was long, winding through fields of high, dry grass. At the end, nestled in a small valley, was the house. It was not a mansion. It was a large two-story farmhouse, built of gray stone and dark wood, with a wide wraparound porch. It looked solid, permanent, and strong. Beside it sat a large, newer metal workshop and an older red barn. As they pulled up, an older couple emerged from the house. "This is your staff, Mr. Donovan," Vaughn said quietly. "Mr. and Mrs. Watson. They managed the property for Arthur for over 30 years. Marcus got out, holding Luna, who was staring, wide-eyed, at the new place. Ghost slid out after him, his nose instantly to the ground, his tail held low in cautious curiosity. Mr. Watson was a man in his late 70s, as weathered as the stone on the house, with calloused hands and a face of kind, reserved lines. Mrs. Watson, a woman with a soft face and worried, compassionate eyes, wore a practical apron. "Mr. Donovan," Arthur Watson said, his voice a respectful gravel. He nodded. "Welcome to the ranch. Mr. Vaughn called ahead. We are so very sorry for your loss. Mr. Pendleton was a good man." "Thank you," Marcus said, feeling the fraud of it all. He hadn't even known Arthur. Mrs. Watson's gaze was fixed on Luna. "Oh my," she whispered. "A little one." Mr. Vaughn didn't say. He just said, "Prepare the nursery." "This is Luna," Marcus said. "Welcome home, Mr. Donovan," Mrs. Watson said, her voice warm. "Please, come in. We have fresh coffee, and I've aired out the master bedroom for you. Please call me Marcus." "As you wish, sir," Mr. Watson replied, the "sir" landing on Marcus like a physical weight. Vaughn stayed for another hour, explaining the basics. The Watsons lived in a small cottage on the other side of the property. They handled the grounds, the maintenance, and the house. They would continue to do so, their salaries paid by the estate until Marcus decided otherwise. Then, with a promise to handle the unpleasantness with Valerie and the rest of the probate, Vaughn left. Marcus was alone. He stood in the center of the main living room. Mrs. Watson had taken Luna to the kitchen to find a cookie. Ghost was pacing. The house was beautiful. It had high, vaulted ceilings with exposed wooden beams. The floors were polished hardwood, and there were windows everywhere. A massive floor-to-ceiling picture window looked out over the valley. It was a stunning million-dollar view, and it was setting Marcus on edge. There was no cover, no concealment. The ceilings were too high. The space was too open. The silence was wrong. It wasn't the silence of a cramped truck cab. It was a vast, empty, echoing silence. Ghost felt it too. His claws made a sharp clicking sound on the hardwood floors, a repetitive, irritating noise that scraped along Marcus's nerves. The dog would not settle. He paced from the front door to the back door, whining low in his throat, then returning to Marcus, pushing his nose into his hand. "I know, boy," Marcus whispered. "It's too big." He walked into the master bedroom. It was 4 times the size of the motel room. A huge, king-sized bed sat in the middle. More windows. He felt exposed, like a target. He couldn't sleep here. He would never sleep here. He would have to sit with his back to a wall, watching all 3 windows and the door all night. Mrs. Watson returned, holding Luna. "We've got the old high chair cleaned up for her," she said, her smile gentle. "Thank you, Mrs. Watson. Thank you." Pew! He took Luna and went to the nursery. It was a small yellow room. Arthur had clearly set it up for a grandchild who never came. A beautiful wooden crib sat against one wall. He put Luna in it. She immediately grabbed the wooden rail and tried to pull herself up. He closed the door, leaving it open just a crack. The silence of the house rushed back in, and with it, the guilt. He was standing in a palace. He was wearing clean clothes. His daughter was safe in a crib. And Deacon was out there, somewhere, probably by the riverbed, getting ready for another cold night. Why me? He thought of Arthur's letter. A soldier who knows how to build. He felt like a fraud, a thief, an imposter who had stumbled into a dead man's life. He hadn't earned this. He hadn't built this. He was just the recipient of a blind, random act of kindness. His chest felt tight. The walls, which were so far away, felt like they were closing in. He had to get out. "Mrs. Watson," he called, his voice too loud in the quiet hall. "I'm just going to look at the grounds." He burst out the front door into the cold, clean air. Ghost was beside him in an instant, visibly relieved to be outside, his paws on dirt and grass. Marcus looked at the outbuildings. The red barn was old, leaning slightly. But the workshop? It was new. It was a large, practical, metal-sided building. He walked to it. A heavy-duty padlock was on the door, with a key in it. He turned the key, the metal cold against his fingers, and pulled the large, sliding door. The door moved with a heavy, grinding rumble of metal on metal. It was a real, solid sound. He stepped inside. The workshop smelled of motor oil, sawdust, and cold steel. It was perfect. It was not a house. It was a place of work. Tools hung on neat pegboard walls. A large workbench ran the length of one side. In the center sat a metal lathe. In the corner was a welding station. This was Arthur's sanctuary. But more importantly, it was defensible. It had solid steel walls. No windows, save for 2 small, high, frosted glass panes that let in light but were impossible to see through. One main door, solid steel, that could be barred. It was the size of his old barracks bay. It was the size of his EOD container. It was safe. Ghost walked in. He sniffed the perimeter once. He went to the corner by the workbench, turned in a circle 3 times, and lay down with a heavy, contented sigh. He was finally off duty. Marcus let out a breath he felt he'd been holding for 5 years. He knew what he had to do. He went back to the main house. The Watsons were in the kitchen, giving him privacy. "Mr. Watson? Mrs. Watson?" They both came out, wiping their hands. "Sir?" "I need your help," Marcus said. I need to move the crib." Mrs. Watson's brow furrowed in confusion. "To another room, sir? The blue room has a nice view?" "No," Marcus said, pointing out the window. "To the workshop." Their polite, professional faces could not hide their shock. "The workshop?" Mr. Watson said, his voice flat. "Sir, it's a workshop. It's full of tools. It's not insulated. There's no heat, save for that old propane unit." "It's fine," Marcus said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "It's safe." Without another word, the Watsons, true to their 30 years of service, simply nodded. 10 minutes later, the wooden crib was set up in the corner of the workshop. Marcus went back to the main house and stripped a mattress from a guest room, dragging it across the yard himself. He set it on the floor next to the crib. He grabbed his rucksack, the diaper bag, and the new plush bed he'd bought for Ghost. He set up his new home. He placed the mattress against the solid steel wall. He put Luna's crib beside it. He put Ghost's bed on the other side, near the sliding door. A perfect, tight, defensible triangle. He brought Luna in, her small, warm body smelling of kitchen cookies. He placed her in the crib. He sat down on the mattress, his back against the wall. The cold of the concrete floor seeped through, but it was a real, solid feeling. Ghost was already asleep at his feet. Marcus looked around the dark, quiet space. The smell of oil, the glint of steel, the sounds of his daughter breathing. He was not an imposter here. He was not the lord of a manor. He was a soldier in his barracks, guarding his family. And for the first time since he'd come home from the war, Marcus Donovan felt safe. Life in the workshop had a rhythm. It was a rhythm of cold concrete, warm coffee, and the smell of steel. It had been 4 days since Marcus, Luna, and Ghost had moved into the metal building. 4 days since he had politely but firmly refused Mrs. Watson's offers to prepare the main house. The Watsons, for their part, had adapted with the stoic resilience of people who have served a single eccentric master for 30 years. They did not understand, but they obeyed. Mrs. Watson, a short, kind woman whose face was a map of gentle worry, would arrive at the workshop door 3 times a day with a tray. She would bring hot, nourishing food for Marcus, pured vegetables and fruit for Luna, and after a quiet word from Marcus, a small bowl of beef scraps for Ghost. "It's just not right, sir," she had said, her hands twisting in her apron as she looked at the mattress on the floor. "That big house, all those empty, warm beds. This is better for me, Mrs. Watson," Marcus had replied, his voice gentle. "It's quieter." She did not understand that the vast, echoing silence of the main house was louder than any explosion. Here, in the workshop, the sounds were real. The hum of the propane heater, the metallic scrape of a wrench as he idly cleaned it, the soft, contented breathing of Luna from her crib, the thump-thump-thump of Ghost's tail hitting the floor when he saw her. Here, he had a single, solid steel door that slid on a track. He had no picture windows. He could put his back to a wall and see the only entrance. Here, he could finally, truly, breathe. He was sitting on the floor, his back against the workbench, patiently showing Luna how to stack 2 wooden blocks. She was 14 months old and far more interested in putting them in her mouth. Ghost was lying at the entrance, a 90-pound gray and white sentinel, his body relaxed, but his head up, ears passively tracking the sounds of the ranch. Suddenly, the dog's head lifted, his ears swiveled, locking forward. A low, almost imperceptible rumble started in his chest. Marcus was on his feet before the sound had even registered in his own ears. "What is it, boy? What do you hear?" Ghost didn't bark. He just stared at the driveway, his body tensing. Then Marcus heard it. The sound of tires on gravel, driving too fast. It was not Mr. Watson's slow, steady pickup. This was an unfamiliar engine, high-pitched and angry. A sleek black rental sedan, a car totally unsuited for a gravel ranch road, slid to a stop a few feet from the workshop door, kicking up a plume of dust. Marcus instinctively reached down and scooped up Luna, settling her on his hip. She immediately buried her face in his neck, startled by the sudden movement. "Stay," he commanded Ghost. The dog held his position at the door, a solid, unmoving statue. The car door opened. A woman stepped out. It was Valerie, but it was not the Valerie he remembered. The tired, frustrated woman in yoga pants and a messy bun was gone. This Valerie had new, salon blonde hair cut in a sharp, expensive-looking bob. She wore tight designer jeans, high-heeled boots that were already sinking into the dirt, and a bright red jacket that looked like it cost more than his old truck. She was hiding her eyes behind a pair of oversized black sunglasses. She looked like someone playing a part. She stood by the car, her head turning, taking in the main house, the barn, the sheer scale of the property. A look of stunned, greedy calculation crossed her face before she saw him standing in the shadows of the workshop. "Marcus," she said, her voice a brittle, unfamiliar thing. She strutted toward him, her heels making angry, punching sounds in the dirt. "So, this is it. You did well for yourself, didn't you? Hitting the lottery." Marcus stood his ground in the doorway. He did not move. "What are you doing here, Valerie?" His voice was cold, flat. It was the voice he used to use for EOD briefings. It was not the voice of the broken man she had left at the truck stop. This lack of fear, this absolute calm, clearly unnerved her. "What am I doing here?" she scoffed, pushing her sunglasses on top of her head. Her eyes were hard. "I came to find out what's going on. I saw the probate notice. It's public record, you know." She took a step closer, her voice dropping into a venomous, disbelieving hiss. "Arthur Pendleton, $5 million plus a ranch. $5 million. She jabbed a finger at him. "You let me walk away with $50,000. Our money, by the way, my money for putting up with you. When you knew this was waiting, you set me up. You tricked me." The sheer, staggering arrogance of her accusation almost made Marcus laugh. She had stolen his entire disability payout, left him and her daughter to die, and had now returned to accuse him of being unfair. "I didn't know," he said simply. "I found out the day after you left us." "Liar!" she shrieked, the sound echoing off the metal building. "You've been planning this?" "No," Marcus said. "You planned. I survived." Valerie's face contorted. The rich act was falling away, revealing the raw, desperate greed beneath. She saw the wall of his calm, and she realized she had no power over him. So she reached for her only weapon. Her eyes flicked to the small, dark-haired toddler clinging to his neck. "Well," Valerie said, her voice turning oily and false, "it doesn't matter. I'm her mother. I'm not going to let you keep my daughter away from me, or away from her inheritance." "You don't have a daughter," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. "You stopped being her mother when you left her in a cold truck." "A judge won't see it that way," she snapped, her confidence returning. She had found her angle. They'll see a loving, stable mother who was worried about her child's safety. And they'll see this. She waved a hand at the workshop. "A sick, unstable veteran, suffering from PTSD, who is living in a garage with a child. You're unfit, Marcus. They will give me full custody, and you will be paying me child support for the rest of your life. A lot of it." It was a plausible, terrifying threat. And then she escalated. "Give her to me," Valerie demanded. "I'm taking her." She lunged forward, not like a mother, but like someone grabbing a winning lottery ticket. Her hands were claws, reaching for Luna. Luna, who had been watching this strange, loud woman with fearful wide eyes, now screamed. It was a sound of pure terror. She buried her face in Marcus's flannel shirt, her tiny hands gripping his collar so hard her knuckles were white. "No!" Marcus roared, pulling back, twisting his body to shield Luna. "Get back, Valerie! You are not touching her!" He was bracing for a fight, but he didn't have to. Ghost moved. He had been silent, a gray shadow at the entrance. He had been watching. The second Valerie lunged, he was no longer a shadow. He was a wall. He did not run. He did not jump. He simply stepped, with a speed that was shocking, and planted himself directly between Valerie and Marcus. He did not growl. He did not bark. Valerie froze. She was inches from him. Ghost stood, rigid, his entire body a knot of pure, controlled muscle. He was staring at her, his dark eyes flat and empty of all emotion. And then, in a gesture that was more terrifying than any sound, he slowly, deliberately, lifted the black lip on the left side of his mouth, just enough to expose the long, white canine tooth beneath. It was a silent, lethal promise. The only sound was the wind, the high-pitched ee-ee-ee of Luna's terrified crying, and Valerie's own sudden, sharp intake of breath. She took a step back, then another. He's... Call him off, she stammered, her face pale. "He won't move, Valerie," Marcus said, his voice perfectly calm. He was still comforting Luna, rubbing her back. He was secure in his fortress. "And neither will I." He looked at the woman who had shattered his life. She was a bully, and she had just met a force she could not intimidate. With his free hand, Marcus reached into the breast pocket of his shirt. He pulled out a small, stiff white business card. He held it out to her. "You're not talking to me anymore," he said. "From now on, you talk to him." Valerie stared at the card as if it were a weapon. "Mitchell Vaughn," Marcus said, reading the name aloud. "Vaughn, Steiner, and Associates. He's my lawyer. He's handling everything." The transfer of power was absolute. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't threatening. He was delegating. He was using the very system of money and lawyers that she had tried to use against him. Valerie's face, a mask of rage, confusion, and humiliation, was her final answer. She snatched the card from his hand, crumpling it. "This isn't over, Marcus," she spat, her voice a pathetic imitation of her earlier confidence. "You can't hide behind your money and your attack dog forever?" "I'm not hiding," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm home. Get off my property. Now." Valerie held his gaze for one more second. She saw the man she left, but he was gone. In his place was someone colder, someone harder, someone she couldn't break. She turned, her heels digging awkwardly in the dirt, and scrambled back into her rental car. She threw it in reverse, spraying gravel, and sped down the long driveway, a trail of dust in her wake. Marcus stood in the doorway of his workshop for a long time. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him shaking. Luna's cries subsided into small, hiccuping sobs. "Da-da." "I've got you, Pumpkin," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. "I've got you. You're safe." Ghost finally relaxed. The lip lowered. The rigid tension left his body. He let out a heavy sigh, his breath fogging in the cold air. He turned and pressed his head firmly against Marcus's leg, a solid, warm reassurance. Marcus reached down and buried his free hand in the thick, gray fur. "Good boy," he whispered. "Good boy." The fortress had held. The confrontation with Valerie, as traumatic as it had been, had lanced a boil. The threat was no longer a shadow. It was a known quantity, and it was being handled by Mitchell Vaughn. But as the adrenaline faded, something else took its place. Marcus was sleeping, but he was not resting. The workshop was his fortress, but at night, in the deep, absolute quiet of the ranch, his mind would not shut down. He would lie on the mattress, the solid steel wall at his back, Luna's soft breathing in her crib beside him, Ghost's heavy, rhythmic sigh at his feet. They were safe. They were warm. They were fed. And that was the problem. His guilt had a name. It was Deacon. Every time Marcus closed his eyes, he saw the older veteran's face, a roadmap of hard living. He saw the faded USMC field jacket. He remembered Deacon's kindness, a simple, no-nonsense act of pointing a brother-in-arms in the right direction. Deacon was still out there. He was still cold. He was still navigating the system that Marcus had, by sheer dumb luck, escaped. This was the survivor's guilt that had haunted him in the service, but magnified. He wasn't the survivor of an IED. He was the survivor of poverty. And it felt just as random and just as undeserved. He was an imposter, a man living in a dead man's workshop, a fraud waiting to be exposed. He knew he couldn't stay in the workshop forever. He wasn't just hiding from the house's open spaces. He was hiding from the responsibility that came with it. On the fifth morning, driven by this restless, gnawing unease, he made a decision. He waited for Mrs. Watson to arrive with the breakfast tray. "Mrs. Watson," he said, handing her his empty coffee mug, I need to go through Mr. Pendleton's office, today." A look of profound relief washed over her kind face. "Oh, yes, sir. Of course. It's just as he left it, in the main house, top of the stairs. We haven't touched a thing, just dusted." He bundled Luna up and carried her to the main house. He set up her portable playpen in the large, echoing living room, a space he still hated. Ghost, sensing Marcus's anxiety, stuck close to the playpen, his presence a silent, gray guardian. "I'll be right back, Pumpkin," Marcus murmured. He climbed the stairs, his boots loud on the polished hardwood. Arthur's office was at the end of the hall. It was the only room he had not yet entered. He pushed the door open. It swung with a soft, well-oiled sound. It was a man's room. It smelled of old paper, leather, and pipe tobacco. A large dark wood desk sat facing the window. The walls were lined, not with books, but with binders. Dozens of them, all neatly labeled. Marcus ran his finger along the spines. Ranch maintenance. Cattle breeding, 1980, 1990. Tax records. Then he saw it. A single, thick, leather-bound binder that didn't match the others. The label on the spine was written by hand in Arthur's shaky cursive. The Pendleton Project. Do not toss. His heart gave a strange, heavy beat. He pulled the binder from the shelf. He sat in Arthur's old leather chair. It squeaked in protest under his weight. He opened the cover. It was not a business plan. It was a dream. The binder was full of sketches, handwritten notes, and newspaper clippings. The first page was a rough, hand-drawn map of the ranch. But the outbuildings were different. The old red barn was labeled Intake Kennels. The fields were labeled Training Area 1, Obedience. Marcus turned the page. He saw sketches of kennels. He saw lists of dog breeds, shepherds, labs, rescues only. He turned another page and found the mission statement written on a yellow legal pad, dated 1998. The system fails them, Arthur had written. They train them, they break them, they send them home, and then they forget them. The men and the dogs. They're both just discarded. They need a place to go, a mission, a job, a new purpose. Marcus's hands were shaking. He read on. Arthur had envisioned a place where homeless veterans could come, live, and learn to train homeless shelter dogs, not just as pets, as service animals, as partners. A soldier needs a mission, Arthur had written on the last page. A dog needs a job. It's the same. They save each other. This is the only thing that makes sense. It was an animal therapy center, a place for guys like him, a place for guys like Deacon. Arthur's letter from Chapter 6 echoed in his head. I am too old to build my dream. I leave it to you, a soldier who knows how to build. This was what he meant. The guilt that had been a suffocating weight in his chest was suddenly transformed. It was no longer guilt. It was fuel. He wasn't an imposter. He was an heir who had just been given his orders. He closed the binder. He picked up Luna from the playpen, grabbed Ghost's leash, and went straight to the old ranch truck Arthur had owned, the 1973 Ford that had started it all. Mr. Watson had it running, part of the estate maintenance. It was his now. It felt right. He drove back to the city, back to the world he had just escaped. He drove past the VA, past the shelters. He went to the places Deacon had shown him. He checked the church parking lot. He checked the park by the river. He finally found him, standing in the same line at the Springs Mission Food Bank where Marcus would have been, if not for a dead man's gratitude. Deacon looked the same. Gray beard, weary eyes, Marine Corps jacket. He was leaning against the brick wall, waiting for his turn. Marcus parked the old Ford, a truck that, despite being an antique, was clean and well-maintained. He got out. Ghost on his leash came with him. Deacon saw him. The old man's eyes narrowed. He looked Marcus up and down. He saw the clean clothes. He saw the well-fed dog. He saw the man who had clearly made it. Marcus walked up to him, stopping a few feet away. Deacon! Well, Deacon rasped, not moving from his spot against the wall. Look at you, Mr. Moneybags. Came back to the zoo to see how the animals are doing? The suspicion was thick, the words sharp. It was exactly the reaction Marcus had expected. No, Marcus said. I came to find you. Yeah? Deacon snorted. What for? Got some conscience money burning a hole in your pocket? Some rich man's charity you want to throw at me? No, Marcus said again. I'm not here to give you charity, Deacon. Good, 'cause I don't want it. I know, Marcus said. I'm not here to offer you a handout. I'm here to offer you a job. Deacon was silent for a long moment, studying Marcus's face. A job. You? What, you need a bodyguard? Someone to polish your new boots? I need a manager, Marcus said, his voice quiet and intense, cutting through the noise of the street. I've just inherited a ranch and a mission. the man who left it to me. He wanted to build a place for veterans, a center to train shelter dogs as service animals. I'm going to build it." He took a step closer. "But I don't know anything about this, not the real stuff, not the street, not the system you've been navigating for years. I just know how to build the walls. I need someone who knows the men I'm building it for, someone who understands what it's really like, someone who knows the street." Deacon stared at him, his hard, cynical expression faltering for the first time. "I don't need an employee, Deacon," Marcus said. "I need a partner. I need you to help me build this. I need you to run it." Marcus reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out cash. He pulled out two things. The first was a brand new, still-in-the-box burner phone. "So I can reach you." He set it on the wall next to Deacon. The second thing was a key. It was old, Ford-stamped, and attached to a simple metal ring. "My old pickup, the one that was my home, it's parked at the ranch. It's yours. It runs. And it's better than walking." He placed the key next to the phone. Deacon looked at the items. He looked at Ghost, who was sitting patiently. He looked back at Marcus. He said nothing. "I'm not going to beg you," Marcus said, his voice flat. "And I'm not going to save you. You don't need saving. You need a mission." He stepped back. "The ranch is 20 miles north. The address is on a piece of paper in the phone box. I'll be in the workshop. The door is open." He turned and started to walk away. "Hey, Donovan," Deacon's voice called out, rough. Marcus stopped and looked back. "Why me?" Deacon asked. "You could hire some college kid with a clipboard and a degree in whatever." "Because you were the only one who helped me when I had nothing," Marcus said. "And you didn't offer me charity. You gave me a map." Marcus turned and walked back to his truck, Ghost trotting at his side. He didn't look back to see if Deacon picked up the phone. He just drove away, leaving the choice and the key in the old Marine's hands. 18 months later, the ranch was transformed. The air was different. The silence that had once amplified Marcus's PTSD was gone, replaced by the sounds of work, of life. The distant sound of disciplined commands, the occasional happy yelp of a dog in training, the rumble of Mr. Watson's tractor. The old, sagging red barn was gone. In its place stood a long, professional kennel building, clean and modern. The main farmhouse, which Marcus had never moved into, was now the official administrative office for the Pendleton K-9 Corps. But the workshop, that was still home. It was a bright, cool Saturday in April. The snow was gone, and the Colorado sun was strong. Today was the first graduation. A sharp, authoritative whistle cut through the air. It was not a sound of alarm. It was a call to order. "On the line, gentlemen." That voice did not belong to the desperate, bearded man Marcus had met in a parking lot. It was the voice of Deacon. The change was profound. The old Marine Corps jacket was gone, replaced by a crisp black polo shirt with the Pendleton K-9 Corps logo embroidered on the chest. He was clean-shaven, his gray-white hair cut short and sharp. He was lean, hard, and moved with a purpose that was almost terrifying in its intensity. He was not a man who had been saved. He was a man who had gone back to work. He was the training supervisor. He stood on a small raised platform, a clipboard in his hand, and surveyed the 5 men standing in a ragged line on the grass. They were the first graduating class. A small crowd of about 20 people, local supporters, Mitchell Vaughn, and a few family members, was gathered on folding chairs. In the front row, holding a program she couldn't read, sat a young woman with a professional, proud smile. Danielle Hoover. Her role as a hospital social worker had ended the day Marcus walked out. Her role as a founding board member of the K-9 Corps was just beginning. Marcus stood off to the side, near the workshop, his hands in the pockets of his old jeans. He still wore the brown leather jacket over a plaid flannel shirt. He was not a director. He was not a CEO. He was the founder, the builder. A small, energetic blur of motion darted past his legs, giggling. "Luna, come on back," he called, his voice soft. "No!" she yelled, a word she had fallen in love with. Luna was nearly 3 years old, a whirlwind of dark hair and strong opinions, her father's determination in her eyes. She ran out onto the lawn, chasing a butterfly. A gray and white shadow detached itself from Marcus's side and trotted after her. Ghost was nearly 7 now. His muzzle was dusted with a little more gray, his movements a little more deliberate, more regal. He was no longer just a companion, he was a guardian. He didn't chase Luna, he escorted her, his body moving to place himself between her and the small seated crowd, his eyes constantly scanning. Luna laughed and threw her arms around the dog's thick neck. He patiently endured the hug, then nudged her, gently but firmly, back toward her father. On the platform, Deacon began the ceremony. "You came here broken," Deacon's voice boomed across the lawn. It was the voice of a drill instructor. "You came here with nothing but your ghosts, and you met dogs, who were just as broken. Shelter dogs, last chancers, dogs that nobody else wanted." He pointed to the 5 dogs sitting at heel next to their handlers. They were alert, healthy, and focused. "The world thinks we saved them," Deacon said, his voice dropping. "But you know the truth. We don't save them. They save us. They give us a new mission, to get up in the morning, to be worthy of their loyalty. Today, you are not just a veteran. You are a K9 handler. You have a purpose." He looked at his list. Sarge! A tall, thin man with haunted eyes, a man Marcus recognized from the local VA, stepped forward. "Sarge," Deacon continued, "you came to us. You wouldn't even look me in the eye. Now look at me." The man's chin came up. "Better. Now, meet your partner." "Hope?" A kennel tech released a young black Labrador. The dog ran out, not to Deacon, but straight to Sarge, sitting perfectly in front of him, looking up with an expression of pure, uncomplicated devotion. The man's tough facade crumbled. He reached down, and the dog pressed its head into his hand. The ceremony continued, one by one, each man paired with a dog, each reunion a quiet, powerful explosion of healing. Finally, Deacon looked at the crowd. "And now," he said, "the man who made this possible, the man who, well, he's the CO, our founder, Marcus Donovan." The small crowd's applause sounded loud in the valley. Marcus hated this part. He walked to the front, standing next to Deacon. He looked at the 5 men. He looked at the 5 dogs. He looked at Danielle Hoover, who was smiling, tears in her eyes. He took a breath. "Deacon does all the talking," Marcus said, his voice quiet, and a few people laughed. I'm just the builder. Arthur Pendleton, the man who left me this ranch. He wrote in a letter that I was a soldier who knows how to build." For a long time I thought he was wrong. He looked at the workshop, his home. When I came here, I was adrift. I was hiding. I had been given everything, and I felt like I had nothing, because I didn't have a mission. He turned his gaze to the 5 new handlers. That feeling, that imposter syndrome, that guilt, it doesn't go away just because your life gets better, he said, his voice raw with an honesty that silenced the crowd. It goes away when you have a purpose, when you have a reason to get up that's bigger than yourself. He pointed to the dogs. "This is a foundation. That's all I built. You men and these dogs, you are the purpose. They are your mission. You are theirs. You saved each other. Thank you for saving me too. Congratulations." He stepped back quickly, the applause starting again. Deacon clapped him on the shoulder, a hard, approving gesture. "Not bad, CO," he muttered. The ceremony broke. People mingled. Mrs. Watson had set out a table of lemonade and cookies. Marcus walked away from the crowd, back toward the lawn, back toward his workshop. He just needed a minute. The speech had cost him. He sat on the grass. The mountains were sharp against the blue sky. "Throw ball, Ghost!" Luna ran up, holding a slimy, well-chewed tennis ball. She threw it, a wobbly 2-foot toss. Ghost, with a long, suffering sigh, picked up the ball, walked it back, and dropped it politely at Marcus's feet. "No, silly doggy," Luna giggled. "For me?" Ghost looked at Marcus. Marcus nodded. The dog picked up the ball and dropped it for Luna. Marcus watched them, a small, perfect circle of life. His girl, his dog. "Mr. Donovan?" Marcus looked up. It was Sarge, the tall, thin man from the ceremony. His new black lab, Hope, was at his side, her tail wagging. "Sarge," Marcus said, getting to his feet and wiping his hand on his jeans. "Congratulations." The man was tough, his arms covered in tattoos, but his voice was shaking. He looked at his new dog, then back at Marcus. "I was where you were. I was in my car. I read about this place. I thought it was a joke." "It's not a joke," Marcus said softly. "No, sir, it's not." Sarge looked overwhelmed. "That speech you gave about purpose? That's the first time anyone got it right." He stuck out a hand, calloused and shaking. I wanted to say thank you." Marcus took his hand. It was a firm, solid grip, the grip of a fellow soldier. "You're welcome. Now you have the watch." Sarge nodded, his eyes full. He couldn't say anything else. He just squeezed his dog's shoulder. Hope looked up at him, her tail thumping, and licked his hand. Marcus stepped back, giving the man his moment. He watched Sarge and his new partner walk toward the kennels. He looked at Danielle Hoover, who was laughing with Deacon. He looked at Mitchell Vaughn, who was already on his phone, probably handling Valerie's latest legal nonsense. Then he looked at his own small family. Luna, having given up on the ball, was now trying to climb onto Ghost's back. The big dog had simply laid down, accepting his fate, a noble gray and white rug for his tiny alpha. Marcus Donovan stood in the sunshine, his back to the workshop that had been his fortress. He was no longer an imposter. He was no longer hiding. He was a builder. And he was home. Marcus and Ghost's story reminds us that even when the entire system fails, the loyalty of one good soul, whether man or animal, can be the one thing that keeps the darkness at bay. It shows us that a mission is not just something you are given. It is something you build from the broken pieces to help others find their way home. We hope this journey of survival and purpose resonated with you. If you believe in second chances and the unwavering bond between a veteran and his K9, we invite you to become part of our community by subscribing. We would be honored if you shared this story, and please let us know in the comments what part of their journey touched you the most. Your support allows us to continue this work. The next story is ready for you. Just click the video that has just appeared on your screen.